When we started our deconstruction journey, Chelsea and I both expanded our knowledge and our worldview by reading books and following social media accounts of people like Dante Stewart, people like Nadia Boltz-Weber, Sarah Bessey, and Rachel Held Evans.
And even though Rachel Held Evans has passed, she started a conference in Minneapolis called the Evolving Faith Conference. It's a conference that Brandon and I would love to attend.
Definitely.
It would be a dream to be there. This conference is in October, and Brandon and I did the budget, and it looks like it'll be about $1,100 for us to go.
We've started this podcast, and we do it on our own, and we do it for you guys. We have some sponsors, but we really need your help with this.
Yeah, and so we've done the math, and we figured that if every one of our listeners just gives $8, then we could go to this conference for ourselves and for you. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that we could do it if we do it all together. So you'll find information in the link of our bio in this video for the next couple of episodes in our podcast so that you know how you can help us get to the Evolving Faith Conference.
Thank you in advance for the way that you help us.
We love you, Dropouts.
Hi, that's Chelsea.
And that's Brandon.
And you're listening to the Religious Dropouts podcast?
Did I just point the wrong way? Are you over here when they see it or what?
I don't know. Alicia, please fix it.
I'll just do both. Sweet. It's Brandon, and you're listening to the Religious Dropouts. Thanks for dropping in. See what I did there? Anyways.
I see what you did. Welcome. We hope you guys are having a good week.
Yeah. He wanted to say thank you. What's the update with the fundraiser?
Yes. So we have had like 7 or 8 different people give us different amounts, and we're at about $200 raised for us to go to Minneapolis.
We love you guys. That's just incredible. Your support is amazing.
Yeah, we're really excited and really praying that we can get to go and that it's not too much of a burden. Like, we're hoping it's good. So
I know we're gonna be really excited to be able to bring a lot back for you guys and just to rub shoulders with some of the different people there. And I don't know, it's just gonna be great. So we just really hope that you'll help us in that. And for those of you that have, we just thank you so much. And for those of you that haven't, but you're just praying, we appreciate you too. Like, we love you guys. So thanks for being here.
Definitely. I have this image in my head where Chelsea's gonna walk into the elevator and it's gonna go down, and then the next floor, Nadia Boltz-Weber is gonna get out, and like,
I swear to
you'll
God,
be right there.
I don't want that to happen because I will shit myself. And if that happens to me, speaking of shitting myself, I was thinking of our most embarrassing stories today, and I was thinking about this time I worked at this place, like it was like a smaller ice cream place, and I worked there, and I was like serving a customer, and I just felt the rumbles, and I was just like, I know that whatever is about to take place is not going to be good, but I'm just going to finish this customer real quick because he just got like a sundae or whatever. So I was at the ice cream machine putting in like the bottom layer, and I just had this like little fart, and it felt pretty small, felt like nothing I really needed to be concerned about. However, it was concerning, and it was not just a fart. It was, as people describe, a shart. And the worst part was it like literally like a tiny bit started coming down my leg while I was like cashing the customer out. It was the most shameful moment of my whole life, other than being in a denomination that was non-affirming for so many years. That was also very shameful. But anyway, neither here nor there. But yeah. But my dad, this is the worst part though. The shitting your pants is whatever, okay? But I had to call my mom. I'm like, Mom, please be right back. My mom's like, I cannot bring you pants. I'm super busy at work. No, I'm like, Mom, I am literally in a crisis. Like, I cannot even work like this. And so my mom like hangs up on me, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I call my dad, and I'm like, Dad, or no, I don't call my dad. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I start like almost having a panic attack. I'm like crying. And my dad calls me, and he's like, hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes with pants. I'm like, oh my God. So then I realized that my mom called my dad and told him everything that happened, and my dad brought me pants, and it was so embarrassing. I'm like, wow. So now he knows the story because of my mom's mouth. You're the worst, Mom. Hope you're listening to this. Yeah, it was devastating. Anyways,
so I always struggle with this question because I feel like I make awkward situations happen all the time.
like, but I have learned to live with them. But most embarrassing moment is, I haven't told you this, Chelsea. I don't know if this is most embarrassing because, like I said, I've learned to live with it. But here's an embarrassing story.
Okay.
And I was like a 9th grader, and I was helping with the middle school swim team because I swam in high school. And at like a county meet where there were 6 or 7 different schools, I was standing, and some students decided to pants me on the pool deck. So I have no clue who noticed. I'm pretty sure I pulled my pants up real quick. But I have to say, what makes it really embarrassing is I never knew the amount of people that actually saw. But what really made it embarrassing is because American Eagle was like the shit back then.
Definitely.
And I had like American Eagle underwear was too expensive. Definitely. But I did find some clearance boxers that were white with a bunch of orange eagles, the American Eagle logo all over them.
You were wearing the off-brand Eagles when you got
No, they were on brand. They were just clearance at American Eagle. So it's like the one time you wear the odd underwear, that's when you get pantsed on the pool deck in front of hundreds, probably.
Wow. So, yeah. That is such a good story. I'm really glad we went into the archives for that.
And middle schoolers. And when you're in 9th grade, you're trying to be a big dog, right? You're trying not to be like seen as a joke. You want to be taken seriously with authority. And all of that was ripped from me in that pantsed moment.
Mostly me abandoning like all rules and never doing what I was supposed to be doing. That kind of abandoned that for me in high school. But the pants situation, yeah, that would have done it too. So funny. I love that.
That's my embarrassing story. Let's do Big Mad Energy.
Okay, cool. So, Big Mad Energy, welcome to the scene.
What y'all mad about now? Y'all really pressed over that shit? Wow. Big Mad. Y'all got Big Mad Energy. Y'all just want an excuse to hate, acting like I really care.
So, Big Mad Energy, we have this video that was viral this week, and actually there are lots of articles about it, where this pastor that is always wildin' is named Greg Lockes. And Greg is, we're going to play the clip, but for those of you that are
trigger warning
for sure, that are listening, he takes a baseball bat. Dude. At the top of the bat, he wraps a Bible around it and then duct tapes it. And then he has like a giant Barbie Dreamhouse on stage
that I wish I could have had before it was demolished.
I know, right?
Those are expensive. Keep going.
Those are expensive. And he starts like beating it for a big deal point, which, Chelsea, I don't even know if you remember the point, but I mean, yeah. I can only imagine he was basically saying, with the authority of Scripture, you destroy the demonic presence of Barbie.
Yeah. It says members of the church told the news in Tennessee that they were involved in a quote unquote spiritual supernatural battle that must be fought with the word of God. That was what it was. So let's roll the clip and let you guys take a look for yourself. And again, if you're watching or if you're listening and not watching, sorry about that, but you can definitely Google this later, but we'll take a second to play that clip now.
The stronghold comes down when you demolish it with the Bible. You gotta start tearing that mess up. You gotta break it down. You gotta cast down imagination and every high thing that exalts itself. You gotta get in the Bible and beat that stronghold to death.
I can't. Chelsea, if you were in the front row and you didn't know to expect that with your praise and worship that day.
Oh my God.
How do you react?
First of all, to be in a church with anyone named Greg Lockes, like immediately no. So it would never happen. Couldn't be me. But hypothetically, I didn't know anything about the church world, and I never heard this dude's name before, and I never knew how psychologically actually like undiagnosed insane he was. Then I honestly, I really have no idea what I would do, but I think I would get up and like face the and I would just be like, you know what I mean? Like just like everybody stop, stop the show. You know what I mean? Seriously. And I'm not even kidding because
where are the cameras?
Yeah, right. Like if I ever was in a situation that was really like that was that bad. I've been in situations that are 1/10 what that was, and I blasted them on TikTok. Like, let alone if I was sitting in the room while that was going on. Like, there's no way.
Chelsea, why do you think the gospel makes room for the American dream, but not Barbie's dream house?
Bro. And that's the thing, dude. Like, this dude taped a Bible. Like, can we just roll the clip? No, I'm just kidding. Like, honestly, I want you guys to watch like 10 more times, but it's very triggering. But it's like this dude literally taped a Bible, and the scripture that he taped was 2 Corinthians 10:4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. And it's like, Gregory Locke, bro, you have some strongholds. If anybody needs to be beating anybody, God is probably trying to use that message to beat the shit out of you to like wake up. Like you are so, you are out of your mind, bro. So it's just so ironic that God was like probably really trying to speak to him and say some stuff, but somehow that turned into him doing this. And I just think, wow, mistranslation there, buddy. You missed a few things.
Imagine if a record-breaking movie like Barbie helps women feel empowered. Imagine the type of scared you must feel if you've been preaching patriarchy your entire life as a pastor. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
it's your whole theology. Everything you do is based on this idea that you are better than everyone in your church because you are a white male. Everything. Right. It's your skin color. It's your gender. Even your age. You know, I'm sure there's some ageism there with him. I mean, he's like the worst. Yeah. So it's just like you've built your whole church, your board, everybody that surrounds themselves with you. You've built this on this idea that you are superior. So God forbid a movie comes out that threatens that. You better tape your damn Bible to it and frickin' figure that out. So.
I didn't Google this in preparation for the podcast, but I can't believe I didn't think to look up like, what is Mark Driscoll saying about the Barbie movie?
I got you. Mark Driscoll used to be, what was that church? Mars Hill. Mark Driscoll B.
But now he's still pastoring, Chelsea. Like he's somewhere in like Texas at a Trinity church or something.
I know. And this article right here is from August 17th, so just a few days ago, and it says Mark Driscoll declares war on the woke beta male pastors. and it says disgraced pastor Mark Driscoll recently referred to President Joe Biden as Ahab, said the Jezebel spirit canceled Easter during the pandemic. He also claimed that neutered and compromised beta male pastors who don't call out our current woke agendas are to blame for society's ills. And I can't even keep going, but of course he did. Of course he said that. Like, it's just, and he's still a pastor. Like, people still sit at this dude's church. I can't.
That beta male, alpha male thing is real triggering for me.
I know it is. I didn't mean to. I didn't expect it. You told me to Google it. No, for real though.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so sad. And what I wanted to say though about that, but you know what really pissed me off about that, which is going to kind of lead us into maybe our next conversation. Who knows? Because we just kind of we let the wind take us, you know, the Holy Spirit, I mean. And so what really pissed me off about that is that like no pastor spoke up about it. Now, let me say this. I'm sure a bunch of them didn't know, but I know there are a bunch of them that knew, that saw it, that read it, and not one like spoke out against it, except like a couple that I saw. And it's like, that's something that every one of you should have been speaking up against. But I can almost guarantee like at least 70% of you were too scared to say something about it because you know there are people in your very own congregation that tithe to you, that go to your church, that sit in your pews, that agree with Greg Lockes. So you were too coward to call it out. And I'm not saying that about everyone, but I just think there are a lot of pastors that I know for sure that the reason that they didn't post against this situation is because they didn't want to piss off their people. They didn't want to piss off the conservatives.
Or they are them.
Yep.
They agree.
Yep.
Yeah. You either agree or you're scared of those in your congregation that do agree.
Yep. It is an insane blessing and privilege to have Sycamore Creek Church as one of our sponsors on the Religious Dropouts podcast. When we launched this podcast, we never imagined accepting a church sponsorship. But this church really does just hit different. The community of people really do believe in Jesus and justice. They're also LGBTQ plus affirming, which means that all are included and welcome, no matter who we love. They put action and effort into working for racial equity, and they deeply care about being multiculturally curious, creative, and compassionate.
If there was a church the Religious Dropouts could preach a live sermon or podcast at, this would so be it. If church isn't for you, please ignore this ad. But if you are curious about what the body of Christ looks like, this Jesus-loving congregation is located in Lansing, Michigan, and is launching a campus in the Eastwood area on October 1st. Tell Pastor Tom that Brandon and Chelsea said hey. Yep.
And that made me think about when I said our next conversation, because it kind of gave me this like that secret allyship frustration again.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon, I don't know, like I said this on episode 5, and here we are on episode 15, and I'm saying it again. We are in 2023, dude. Your allyship behind closed doors is unforgivable at this point. Like I am so like, I'm so sick of like, it was like, even with June being Pride Month, or like Pride in my hometown was this weekend. And I just see these pastors not saying anything. And I'm like, God, do you have any clue how many students need to hear you advocate for them, need to see you give a shit? And it's just like, I'm so tired of the secret, you know, how many Nazarene pastors I know sitting in the freaking closet affirming teenagers, but not saying it out loud. Like, I'm just so done, dude. I'm so at capacity with that.
Right. And, or even like, we believe women have the gifts and graces, but you won't challenge the systems that stop them. And by systems, I mean very easy things to change in your own congregations. Like I'm talking like non-denominational churches where their boards they control them. It's not the same as every 4 years you have to go to a general assembly.
Right.
You won't change the systems that will help those people that you believe are called enough to be anything.
Right.
Verbally, when you're talking to them in a counseling session or something like that.
Exactly.
But then you'll support the theology that says like, well, kind of. So I just don't get it.
I really don't. Ugh.
It makes me think of grooming. Yeah. And how they'll support systems that in theologies that they'll say is God given.
Yeah.
But they won't deny they'll deny the fingerprints of any human construct being built into it.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is like humans have issues with racism, sexism, homophobia.
No, not if you're Christian. No, we're all God's children.
Sure.
We're all the same. Right?
Right. We should be if only Christians treated each other like they meant that.
Right.
Yeah.
And advocated, like you're talking about, for systems that push against the racism, against the bigotry, and vote that way and act that way and do things that way, but they don't. So
but instead they're commonly on the sides that support them and uphold them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you brought up grooming, because I've heard that conversation so much in the LGBTQ community. I've heard so many people talk about that. I made a post once about my daughter's favorite book being A Day with My Two Dads or whatever. And one of the messages I got was that books like that are grooming little kids. Right. And I thought that was so interesting because I don't understand it. I don't understand how you could ever make something that's just about love sexual. And I don't understand how you can always turn it into a grooming conversation and always involve kids. It's weird to me. But the reason it's so weird to me is because I thought of two things. I thought, number one, the real grooming that I see happening 10 times more than not, or than any other community, is the grooming of church leaders and Christian parents grooming their kids into this systemic, this broken systemic, I don't even know what you call it, organization, institution that is corrupt in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. And they raise them up to be quiet, and they raise them up to not be curious and not ask questions. And I'm like, the real grooming is not happening in the LGBTQ community. The real grooming really literally is happening right in your churches. And it's you.
Did you see the documentary? I know we're probably late to this, but what's that, Happy Little People or something?
No, that
was on Netflix.
That is a hilarious title you just dropped for other reasons. But you're talking about Happy Shiny People or something. And
what are we talking about here? Happy Shiny People?
Happy Little People is a Little People show about people that are, it's about people that I don't know what the correct term is, but they're just a little bit shorter than us, and it's about their life. And then Happy Shiny People, or whatever it is, I can't think of the title, but you're right, about the Duggars, which was interesting because they didn't talk that much about the Duggars, but they did talk about grooming. That was the whole thing.
Well, in the church that they belong to. Jackie watched it. Maybe we'll watch it and then give our thoughts one episode, but like
Jackie and I talked about it. We both watched it.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So I would pop into the room. Do you know those times where you're like significant others watching something and you're like, and then you just want to know what's going on, so you find yourself standing there for 30 minutes watching a part of their episode, and I was sweating only after 30 minutes of watching some of the content at the. It's a grooming conversation around the way these parents and these pastors and churches really groomed these kids into being what they wanted them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we see it all the time, but it's like, why is nobody willing to have that conversation? You guys are so willing to talk about like predators in the LGBT community, and God forbid, like, what if a dude uses their bathroom? Like, it's just so like the craziest shit. And it's like, aren't you more scared that your pastor is going to molest your daughter? Because typically, statistically, your pastor is going to rape your daughter before anyone transgender in your bathroom is. And that's, I don't care what you say about that's statistics. That's not just me talking shit. That's like real life stats. So like focus on what really is the grooming problem and what really is going on. And how do we like fix that issue before you're worried about like other communities?
Every time there's any sense of representation in the media, the conservatives go hard on the grooming. Always. And Christians, and I don't even want to say that of conservatives. It's mainly Christians too.
Yeah, evangelicals. The evangelicals.
Right. That will, even evangelical Christians that, if Pixar makes a woman standing next to another woman and they have a child someday, like that's an issue to these people.
Boycott Pixar.
I know.
But it's
know
like
some people.
But you're
I know some people that stopped going to Disney altogether.
Bro, oh my, stop. I can't even handle it. But that's what I mean. Like, they'll be like, ban it. But then you have a movie, you have a movie like Beauty and the Beast. Bro, tell me right now, I want to meet one father. I want to meet one dad that would say that Gaston's representation of pursuing Belle is morally right. And is like appropriate in any capacity. Like, I want to know the way he speaks to her, so I'm not trying to rewrite history, right? I love Beauty and the Beast. Like, we don't need to cancel it. I'm not saying I'm just saying, you're telling me right now you would rather your kid watch that kind of coercion and that kind of grooming rather than watch a movie where two characters might be the same gender and they have a family. Like, what's more dangerous to you? It ain't that.
So if a gay man dances with another one at the end credits or whatever, that's grooming.
Right.
But literally Gaston can barge into Belle's house,
Right.
kick his boots off, almost take her dress off, like literally like get in her way, doesn't respond to no, and that's not sexual harassment.
Right. But LeFou dancing with the man at the end. Oh, that movie's that's time for the gay agenda. Where's my
and
gavel?
it's ballroom dancing. It's not even like it's not even the bump and
Brandon's
grind or
done
anything
that
that you might have had at your high school,
right.
at your public school gym.
Brandon's done ballroom dancing. He knows it's not gay. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's right.
According to my,
you can quote me on that.
According to my gay agenda handbook. Oh, yep, ballroom dancing, gay. Okay, yep. LeFou, gay. Gaston, secretly gay. Grew up in a very conservative.
Thank you for joining us at the Gay Agenda meeting on this August 24th.
So, as we wrap up gay agendas, I went to Pride this weekend. It was so cool. I'll see if Alicia can throw up some pictures, if she has time. Which I know this episode she's editing, the turnaround time is pretty quick, but she has a couple pictures of us from Pride. We went together, and that was really cool. It was in Toledo. So Toledo, obviously, Pride Month is in June. If you didn't know that, but Toledo does their own Pride in August, and so they do that every year. It's a huge parade, huge event downtown Toledo, and so that was this past weekend. I went to that, so that was awesome.
That's amazing. How did it feel? Because I know this was your first Pride, since you've been publicly out, since you've been away from a denomination that
I'm just kidding.
That would have never allowed you to wear they hardly allowed you to wear anything that said you are loved with a rainbow behind it. Yeah. But to be there, and you have to tell the story of kind of what your therapist said.
Oh yeah. Well, it felt amazing. And I think it felt so amazing because last year I went to the Pride brunch. It was on a Sunday. And I wore a shirt that said, "Sounds gay, I'm in." And Alicia would take pictures of us, and I would tell her, make sure you crop my chest. Like, don't post my shirt. Because I was just transitioning out of the Nazarene church.
Oh, wow.
And I remember just feeling scared. Like, what if I saw somebody, or what if someone saw me down there with a gay shirt, or whatever. And this year, like, I wore a shirt that said Biconic, and I wore, pink and blue makeup, and I just really was so comfortable and free. And like, I think that the coolest part about being there was not the way that I felt about myself, but when I was in ministry, I dreamed of a world where the LGBTQ community could be and be safe. And I remember having like these Bible studies with like, kids that were identified in the LGBTQ community of some, like any kind of facet. Maybe they were gay, maybe they were lesbian, maybe they were bisexual, maybe they were transgender, but in some capacity they identified with the community. And I would do like Bible studies with these kids, like sometimes at camp, sometimes in my own town I was pastoring in. And I always dreamed that like they would find spaces where it wasn't something special and like private that they had to do, but it could be something where they were like safe and welcome. And I remember getting out of the Uber when we got dropped off down there, because it's so crazy down there. And all you saw was like this, like hundreds of kids and adults, and all this rainbow and all this glitter and all this joy and all these people just free. Like it was the most beautiful. It felt like heaven to me. I just like closed my eyes for a second. I told Alicia, I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm already crying. And I was already crying because not only did I feel like I was at home, but I also looked around and I'm like, I know that every one of these people here, this is their community, and they don't have to hide, and they don't have to be ashamed, and they don't have to be scared. Like, they belong here, and they wholeheartedly belong here. Like, no one had to make space for them. It's just here. And so it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Were there churches that walked in the parade?
Oh my God. Yeah. There was like 7. They were awesome.
Wow.
And I took a picture of the one. I'll have to pull it up. But as I was getting ready to go, I had therapy that day, or the day before I had therapy. And when I was getting off the phone with my therapist, because I've been seeing her for 2 years, she said, she said, "Hey, Chelsea, are you going to be at Pride this weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah." And her name's Claire. Claire, I know you listen to this. Love you, boo. She's the best therapist in the whole world.
Ooh,
Anyway,
thank you,
I always
Claire.
like, yeah, you're best, Claire. Thanks for keeping us alive in here. And she said to me, "Are you going to Pride?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I just want you to remember how far you've come, and I really want you to live into every moment when you're there, because it's like sacred for you, because this is what we worked for. This is what we dreamed about, was this day."
Right.
You know, and I remember being in therapy 2 years ago and talking about my identity and talking about how I wish I could be open about it. I wish I could talk to people about it. I wish I could be free to post about it and share about Pride and share about how LGBTQ students can be kept safe, organizations that support them. Like, I dreamed of this life. And it was like Claire just reminded me that, like, I'm living it. Like, I'm living in my identity now.
Yeah.
Like, you made it, you know? I mean, we still got a lot to go, but so this church, it was Monroe Street Church, and they, oh my gosh, this picture is so cool, but they had this huge rainbow float. It was awesome with like rainbow flames, and their sign on the back of the truck says, "God is straight," and then it's crossed out. And then it says, "God is cis," and then it's crossed out. And then it says, "God is love," and then like a big heart. And I just, the joy from those people as they threw candy and kids walked with rainbow shirts, and it was just so beautiful. And I was like, thank God for this representation.
Imagine, I mean, I'm just having a hard time, honestly, like thinking of those kids walking the parade.
Oh, it was so beautiful. There were so many kids. So many kids.
I just know what a difference that would have made in my life and several of my peers' lives, that like if they were allowed to walk in parades, or not even allowed, if they were shown the way of what it looks like to love people, and saying like, I don't have to be like you, I don't have to be you, you're like, but like I am you, but like that whole thing, and they get to walk in a parade wearing that t-shirt, and they'll grow up in a church that sees people as human beings,
right,
and not objects of the devil, objects of the devil, or like evil, or it's just wild. What, I just can't imagine how those kids will grow up. Do you know what I mean? How we hope.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
I read this quote the other day. I shared it on our Instagram. It says, "If a church will baptize you, receive your tithes, use your talents, and insist on loyalty from you, but will not ordain or marry you because of who you love, that church is not being the church."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I was there probably like 20 minutes before I noticed protesters on the other side of the street. And the hardest part was these protesters were intermingled.
Handing out water bottles?
Yeah, right. You'd think. Being the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
Fruit
snacks or something?
We'll show a picture because it's really disturbing, actually. But
trigger warning.
They congregate. Yes, no, seriously. They congregated behind like a bunch of kids too. There's a bunch of kids on the corner where they decided to post up for a while.
Yeah.
And I walked over to them and I said, "Hey, I'm going to take a picture with you to make you guys look like assholes. But it's too bad that you're such cowards. Your face is covered," because they covered you'll see in the picture. And the one guy that did not have a face covering just smiled, right? Because like, I don't mean anything to them. And then I said, and by the way, because one of their signs says, "Save our kids, save our nation." And I said, "I just want you to know, for the sake of all these kids behind me and my own daughter, because I'm a mom of a 4-year-old, you are way more disturbing than any drag queen or any LGBTQ person that's here in this parade. You and your following are 10 times scarier to these kids." And then I took my selfie and then I walked away. And I literally cannot believe, they had an American flag, because naturally.
They're saving the nation.
Right. And they had masks over their face, right? Because cowards, naturally. And the signs that they held were "Save our kids, save our nation," and "Men can't become women." And I just thought, like, it feels different when you're there. And the most beautiful thing was not I was like the only person that said anything to them. Everyone was so peaceful and so loving, and they didn't even pay them any. They moved like 3 times because nobody even would pay attention to them. And I'm like, what a beautiful group of humans. Like, I couldn't even do that.
Wild.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty scary reality that those guys are walking around in high schools. You know, those guys are preaching in your churches. You know, those guys are leading your Bible studies in your Sunday schools, like, and you being silent about your advocacy for the community or your support, your allyship, is what gives those guys more room to have a stage. So
if you're a pastor and you're listening to this, and this episode is being marked by this idea of like, well, a couple ideas, but I would say you've said a couple times, Chelsea, like, I wish your advocacy was louder than it was.
Absolutely.
And I just think, like, if you could see the eyes of your student underneath those masks, you need to ask yourself, if you can imagine that, and you can imagine a student that you've had or that you do have, then you have a responsibility for your advocacy, because
that's right.
It literally costs people their lives when these kind of people decide that if they just intervene, they'll make a difference, violently intervening, I would say. And they really do think that will change their world if they just take out an ally or a member of this community.
Yep. And I think that is a good segue into this, you know, this horrible, devastating piece of news that we read about this week. The death of Laura. I can't think of her last name, but she was a Canadian woman who, Brandon, I know we just looked at a news story about this recently, and it just happened this past week. Do you want to lend a little bit more context for us?
Laura Carleton was 66, and she died from a gunshot wound. She was outside of her store on, I think, last Friday evening in California, and this guy, Travis Ikiguchi, I think is.
Wow, that was a way better pronunciation than I would have got, but yeah.
Yeah. So Travis decides to have an altercation with this woman because she hangs a pride flag outside of her store. And the sheriff or the officer says in this article on CNN, which we'll link in the bio, says that this was what it was about. And this 27-year-old Travis, I'm 28 for the record, but somebody my age decided to shoot a 66-year-old woman over a pride flag she had in her window, or outside of her store hanging, or like
you know,
all you Chelsea.
No, I you know, I heard a pastor preach once, and he said something like this. Do you know that there are teachers being persecuted for not calling transgenders by their name? So these kids come in, and Becky wants to be Billy, whatever. And if the teacher doesn't respect that, then they get fired. So this teacher's fighting back and this pastor references a story where a teacher is fighting in the Supreme Court, or was fighting in the Supreme Court, because he lost his job over not respecting a student's pronouns. This was a while ago. And this pastor is preaching this message. And here's what I want to say, though. There were a lot of people that were fans of this pastor that when I spoke out about it directly on my TikTok, you can go right to my page and watch it. It's still up. despite the fact that you guys have reported it over 20 times. TikTok still has not taken it down. I've fought it every time and it's never lost. And people had asked me, why did you do that? And I want you to know why I did it is because Travis, the woman who shot, or the man who shot this woman, was very vocal about his hate for this community. He was very derogatory. He was very blunt. There was no doubt that this man, and I have an article right here, and I don't know if we'll link it because we got a lot of shit we've talked about, but in this article, I can literally, and I'll pull it up right now. There are literally tweets of him talking about the LGBTQ community being a dictatorship, talking about what are we going to do with these people, showing visual images, sharing images on his Twitter of burning the rainbow flag, and then mentioning his sacred bond to Christ. So I think this is the stuff, you guys. Like, don't ever ask me again why I call out bigotry when I hear it. Are you kidding me? Why do you not? Because this is what happens. We don't call bigotry out. We let it go, or we just think like it's not that bad, or they didn't say anything that homophobic or whatever, even though it was blatantly disrespectful and blatantly derogatory. But we don't call it out because we're cowards. And then literally a 28-year or a 27-year-old young man that had a million signs that this was how he felt about this community goes and murders a woman, and everyone wants to be like, wow, I cannot believe that actually happened. You can't?
Somebody who I love, but I think has a hard time seeing the truth of these kind of stories, said something when you posted those TikToks. It said something like, Brandon, it's an issue because people go into churches and shoot pastors for these kind of things. And more stories and statistics that say that it's the kids, it's the people that are in those, that are the ears of under those voices, that will go take up arms and will go shoot up schools and go shoot up clubs and women at their own store that wave pride flags. Those are the kids that are in kids by people in their 20s. That are shooting up people. Just because they are willing to lean into who they are or who they love. So as much as I loved that person that said like that, I just kind of said awkwardly, it's not that. What you think of that situation, it's not that. Because people like Greg Lockes are going to still be able to preach tomorrow safely from the pulpit, because there are hundreds of people under the sound of their voice that agree. And they'll always step in front of that guy for whatever whack reason.
Yep, that's right. But it wouldn't surprise me for 1 second if this person that shot this woman, Laura, if the person Travis that was the shooter, if he listened to Greg Lockes. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Not 1 ounce.
Yeah, so as I was looking up, like, do they have an online store? What could I do? Are they doing something? They're a partner organization that Laura worked with a lot. Laura and her family quickly in the store, this organization and her family made a fund for Laura, where they're collecting money on her behalf.
That's awesome.
For anybody that has sympathy or whatnot, they're giving it to this organization. And you know what I'm shocked about is, like, Laura has kids. There's definitely things that Laura probably could use, but this fund is going to community initiatives, to education, to help broaden LGBTQ plus awareness, equity, and inclusion. And I guess I'm just kind of shocked. I'm always shocked when people give of themselves differently, when they pass and families choose to still look out for the people like Laura were looking out for. I've been to a lot of funerals of people that give to like their high school sports funds or whatnot, but it means a whole lot more when they're willing to
I couldn't agree more.
Take care of people whose lives are at stake, really. So tragic story. It honestly frustrates me.
I just think it's devastating that, and the Bud Light can was way more known than the story of Laura's murder over a pride flag. And I grieve that so much that her death doesn't invoke anger in everybody. Like, I grieve that. And it's just really hard.
Yeah.
It's just really hard. But I have this poem that I think we may have read before, but I'd like to close us out with this because I don't know necessarily, but what I do know is that by the grace of God and by the manifestation of my identity, we have attracted somehow quite the following of people from the LGBTQ community, plus community. So my friend sent me this poem back a couple of years ago when I was slowly making the rounds of kind of coming out to my closest friends and family. She sent me this, and I want to share it with you tonight before we kind of sign off. And it's titled Jesus at the Gay Bar. And it says, he's here in the midst of it, right at the center of the dance floor. Robes hitched up to his knees to make it easy for him to spin. At some point in the evening, a boy will touch the hem of his robe and beg to be healed. Beg to be anything other than this. And he will reach out his arms, sweat damp and weary from dance. He'll cup this boy's face in his hands and say, "My beautiful child, there is nothing in this heart of yours that has ever needed to be healed." And I hope that you know that always, but even more than you knowing it, or as much as you knowing it, I hope that you have the audacity and the boldness for people just like Laura to stand up for people like her, to advocate for this community and start speaking up in the times when it would be easier to be silent. And that is just the depths of my soul today. We love you guys.
Hey fam, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Religious Dropouts podcast. We hope it gave you a space to breathe, to laugh, and connect. It's our hope that as you journey along with us, that you too might find yourself saying, "Damn, it feels good to be a dropout." Be sure to check out our show notes for links to anything mentioned in this episode, including ways to connect with us on social media. We'd also love for you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with anyone you know who might want to join our community. You are loved. Have a great week.